Hey everyone, welcome to Health Mastery for Leaders. I am so grateful to have each and every one of you. If you are here, please drop a message in the chat and let us know that you're here and viewing. And this has just been so much fun for me because all of you know that my goal in my life journey here is to heal chronic disease. We are living in quite an unhealthy world. And I hate to say that from a negative sense, but it's also on my heart to actually do healing. So, with Health Mastery for Leaders, now instead of doing full summits, we get to speak to each individual influencer on their own journey. So, today I am so grateful and honored to have Mark Bunn here. So, let me tell you a little bit about Mark, and then I'm going to bring him on so that you can all meet him. Or maybe I'll just bring him on now so you can see his smiling face and welcome him, and then I'll give him a great introduction. So, hi, Mark. Welcome. So grateful
Hi,
to have
Dr. Holly. Hi, everybody. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, so much fun, right? So, Mark has spent like 30 plus years studying all the ancient wisdoms of health, transcendence, higher consciousness, Dharma, which is actually our natural purpose in life, and the deep mysteries of life. And so he's been drawing primarily on Vedic tradition of India, which is from his formal training that many of you have heard us speak about, but Mark will obviously give us a great perspective on Ayurvedic medicine and the teaching of Maharishi Mahesh Yoga. And he discovered how the wise ones throughout history have known of this great secret in life, that hidden beyond their physical universe are certain unseen laws. But most importantly, by Mark understanding and learning how to live and tune in with these eternal laws of life, he's realized that we can enjoy exceptionally good health, fulfill like our higher calling, or hence what you all hear me say, our higher vision, and grow to higher states of consciousness. Who does not want to be even more enlightened in this world, right? So, in essence, he has actually written his 3-time best-selling book, Ancient Wisdom for Modern Health. And maybe at the end, I'll have him put a link in there, or I'll drop it in once he starts talking. So all of you can pick it up because it's going to have his keynote talks in it and, really go into what he's talking about here. He does several talks, podcasts, and as he says, he mumbles to himself when no one is listening. So I would love to introduce Mark. I've been trying to get him on the show for a little while. And Mark, why don't you share a little bit more about yourself and then start in with who are we?
Sure. Well, thank you, Dr. Holly. And I must say, it's a great pleasure to be with your audience because I know they're already so highly conscious and evolved already. So we can really dive down deep into the nitty gritty, not having to sort of stay up on the superficial levels of health. So thank you for that opportunity. So yes, so with my background, that's really just a deep dive into what we call Vedic science. And the first question in Vedic science is as you say, who are we? And of course, we know we're a physical body, we have a name, we have occupations, but according to the ancient sciences, of course, we are spirit. In Vedic science, the term is consciousness or pure consciousness. That's our source, that's the soul, that's our self. And that consciousness knows itself. It turns back on itself to know itself as consciousness. And in that process, it creates the whole universe, including us, our mind, our body, our emotions. And within that, of course, we have our own nature. In Ayurvedic medicine, the nature is called our Prakriti. Our Prakriti gives us an insight into our strengths, our weaknesses, our characteristics. So if we can know not only who we are, get in touch with that spirit, that level of pure consciousness where the field of all knowingness is, we have those insights into our dharma, our highest purpose, our best relationships, our best vocations, our best diet, our best exercise regime, based on this individuality, our mind, body, constitution, or our prakriti, what most people listening will know as our Ayurvedic body type in terms of the doshas, vata, pitta, kapha. So that's sort of the ground level, and then yeah, we can sort of dive in and explore anything from there.
Yeah, so why don't you talk a little bit about the doshas, because I know lots of people have heard like that constitution type, but I know that still like with the doshas, so many people are like, am I vata, am I pitta, am I kap? Maybe
Mm.
like go a little bit into that for our listeners so that they can like really hear it again.
Sure. So in Ayurveda, as a practitioner or traditionally as a doctor, the first question to anyone, a new patient, for example, unlike in our Western model, which is, what's wrong with you? The first question that Ayurvedic practitioner asks is, who are you? And they're asking that in the framework of what's your mind, body makeup. Unless we know what someone's constitution is, as we discussed, certain strengths, certain weaknesses, are they sensitive to the cold, to the heat? Do they tend towards dry skin or oily skin, a strong digestion, a weak digestion? Until people know that, it's very hard for them to maintain balance right throughout the year. So in terms of the doshas, I try to keep it very simple, because unless you do have a good hour or two to really dive deep and get a full understanding, what we want to focus on is just what's called our vikriti. So we've spoken about prakriti, that's our nature, that's where our tendencies are throughout our whole life. But depending on our climate, our lifestyle, the foods we eat, stress at work, then we can develop certain imbalances. And so for people listening in this short time, really, all they have to focus on is how they're feeling at the moment. And so the understanding of the three main doshas, these governing principles, vata, in a simple sense, we could call the airy principle. Vata governs movement, communication. So someone who has a lot of vata in their physiology will be a quick thinker. They'll be very creative. They'll have a quick digestion. They'll have a lot of sort of change. They'll be sensitive to the cold. But if there's too much, the imbalance, this vikriti, insomnia, dry skin, dandruff, irregular digestion, maybe constipation, bowel troubles, those sort of things. For pitta, pitta is the fiery principle in a simple sense. And so pitta governs heat, metabolism, digestion. So someone with a lot of pitta will be often a very good business person or an athlete, very focused, driven, motivated. But too much heat in their physiology might lead to imbalances in terms of, red rashes on the skin, ulcerative colitis, heartburn, that sort of indigestion, inflammation in the body, or mentally and emotionally, anger or aggression or frustration, impatience. And the third one is the kapha governing principle. Kapha we relate to the earthy principle. So people that generally put on weight very easily, they have a very sort of cuddly disposition. They look at a bit of chocolate cake and they put on 2 kilograms, but they have a very sweet, down-to-earth, dependable, reliable nature. But too much earthy principle and they can get depressed, they get down on themselves, sort of that melancholy emotionally, physically, maybe put on weight, prone to diabetes, allergies, that sort of thing. And so the real question in a very simple way now is to ask, and as people are listening, how am I feeling right now? Don't worry about the constitution, what your prakriti is over your lifetime. Don't worry about that. Just, am I feeling anxious? Am I not sleeping well? Am I sort of biting my nails with anxiety? And that's vata. Am I sort of hot under the collar? Am I getting impatient with people? And, my digestion is just ravenous and I eat and I want to eat again. And that is pitta imbalance or a sign of pitta. Am I lethargic and, I just want to be a couch potato and I don't want to go out anywhere? I'm feeling really inert, inertia and lazy, putting on weight and I'm eating comfort food. That's generally a sign of kapha. And so once we've asked those simple questions, we just bring in the opposite qualities to those. Too much vata, too much space in air. Well, I need to maybe meditate more rather than the high energy spin class, or going out and running a 10K, 10 miles, sorry, in America. Can I just do a gentle yin yoga class? Can I just rest and get a bit more sleep? More nourishing food, so a bit more oil in the diet, maybe a little bit more good quality salt, just that grounding, nourishing food and lifestyle. Too much heat, well, we want to bring in the opposite. So more cooling foods, so bitter foods, anything to do with coconut products that are very cooling to the body. They take heat out. In Ayurveda, we have something called ghee, clarified butter. So just a little bit of ghee into the diet, or even massaging it with ghee or coconut oil, really takes that excess heat out of the body, great for the skin, and also calms us down emotionally. So maybe rather than doing exercise in the middle of the day, when Surya, the sun, the heat energy is there, you go for a walk in the evening with the cooling moon or lunar energy. And then for kapha, we want to bring in the opposite. So we want more stimulation for these kapha earthy imbalances. So more stimulation in our food, so more spices, maybe some pepper, some more ginger, to stimulate that digestion, break up the mucus, the congestion, maybe some more stimulating, vigorous exercise that we actually get a bit of, walking, brisk walking, or even jogging to sort of get the body moving and sort of back into balance. So there's some general ideas, but the really simple wisdom is just focus on how we're feeling and treat the imbalance at the moment.
Yeah, and Mark, what I love about what we both do on different levels is that so many patients aren't, or individuals aren't taught to really look at the emotional sense of how are you feeling?
Yeah.
Like in America, even though I treat differently, when a patient comes in, their initial reaction is to sit down, and right away, in like 3 minutes or less, they want to tell me all their symptoms. With
Yeah.
love, I want to hear, but what I say to them is like, we treat differently here. I want to know, first of all, I want to evaluate your body to see what I see, right? From iridology, and I do pulse and tongue diagnosis and things, a little bit of spin off of kind of what you're talking about. And then is there heat in the body? I'm listening for inflammation. And then when we create their treatment plan, it's much like what you're saying. Like if they're hot, let's look at cool.
Yeah.
If they're cool, let's look at warming foods. Whereas Ayurveda goes into like great detail, which is what I love, but so many times, which I would love you to speak on this, like we make health difficult because we're taught it's like kind of, here is a medicine. I won't even call it a pill because some people get upset about that, but here is a medicine that will cure you. But
Mm.
yet, what Mark is speaking about and how I treat, and many of you know, is what is your body saying and how are you feeling?
Yes. Yeah. I love it. And yeah, it's so beautiful to have this back and forth because the marriage of knowledge and wisdom and what you're doing in practice is beautiful. I love it. So yeah, to just complement that, I would bring in the idea from Ayurveda of what we call self-referral medicine. So you're right, the emotions and how we're feeling, of course, of all the ancient traditions, not just Ayurveda, but all the traditional indigenous wisdoms, is primary. And it's again this understanding of consciousness, or the non-physical part of us, this spirit that expresses into our mind, body, and emotions. And so there's a junction point. They say it's the gap between consciousness and our physical body. And at that gap is where all the intelligence that runs our body emanates from. And so if we can be what's called self-referral, as you were saying, instead of focusing on the external symptoms, it's the skin or my digestion or this, then the feeling level brings us into that level where all-knowingness is. And Ayurveda says very clearly that there's a level of our physiology where we know exactly what's either out of balance or what we need to come into balance. And so at that level, we actually don't even need the doctor or the external expert. Most of us aren't at the level, and I'm certainly not at that level every day. So I certainly have doctors and experts like you, Dr. Holly, that I see. But that, I think, is a really beautiful wisdom that you've brought out, that we actually have at our disposal already so much intelligence or ways that we can tune in to what our body's telling us. And it's not only just getting away from the actual symptom, but just listening to our body. I think this is also an ancient wisdom or a practice that we've lost sight of in the West, because we think the expert has to give us the knowledge, and our bodies often are screaming at us, that we're so tired. Just go and rest. Don't go to the gym and do some more exercise. We're full and sleepy because we've eaten too much. So just go and do an intermittent fast for, some time. So I think even just this, it sounds so obvious, but we don't often do it, just a tuning into the body. So many people go throughout every day perpetually dehydrated. No matter how many times they hear, we've got to drink more, but we get busy and they get stressed, and just tuning in to, am I thirsty? Do I need more water? Do I need more rest? There was a great saying that I heard when I first started Ayurveda, and it came from, observing animals in nature, that, when we're tired, we should rest. When we're hungry, we should eat. When we're thirsty, we should drink. And that's as complicated as it should be. And that's what the animals do. And so as you said, it's very, very simple when we really get down to it.
Yeah, and I love, the other piece, like this month for all of my patients and lives are kind of like tuning into your gut health. And that's exactly what Mark was just talking about. Like, what is your gut instinct? Like, what is your gut saying? And we know, like, we think we run by our brain, but really we run more by our gut the more patients I heal over time. And if you ignore that gut instinct and that gut feeling with the communication to the brain, then you're ignoring your health. And when I tell patients we talk about self care, they think self care has to cost money or they have to go do something. But I love what Mark just said, because we were just talking about this with a patient today. It's like, no, if you're tired, take a nap. If you're dehydrated and thirsty, like the thirst and the eating mechanism, like the hunger mechanism, are really close in our brain. Honestly, everybody has heard this. Drink some water first.
Yeah.
You may not be hungry, you may be thirsty, right? And that all goes back to like your gut instinct. So let's talk. I think right now it would be fun to step into, because of the gut and because of like our instincts of who we are, to step into like anything that you'd like to speak about around the consciousness. Like, who are we consciously, and how can we get more in touch with that? Because that's going to help patients with their gut.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, the word consciousness is a great lead in, because in Ayurveda and indeed Vedic science, this is the ultimate practice. And you mentioned Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in the introduction. So when I was 19 years old, I was playing professional football in Australia, and I wasn't listening to my body at all when I would, be getting 100-kilogram men smashing into my head and getting concussed. But he taught something called transcendental meditation. And when I was 19, this sounded very weird, but I did it and I loved it. And he has this beautiful analogy of a tree. And he says, if you're a gardener and you want to grow a really healthy, strong, robust tree, you don't water the leaves. That might make sense, in modern science. You mentioned it makes sense to focus on the symptoms. We've got to attend to the symptoms of disease. But he said, if you water the leaves and the branches and the flowers, the tree dies, because that's not where it's nourished. He says, even though we can't see it with our eyes, the source of the tree is the roots underneath the ground. So we only spend a minute or two watering the ground and the tree flourishes. All the branches, all the leaves, all the flowers. We enjoy the fruit, the mango. Oh, life is heavenly, just with a couple of minutes watering what we can't see. And so this is consciousness. So transcendental meditation was Maharshi's technique from traditional times, thousands and thousands of years ago, that we have to go beyond. That's what transcend means, to go beyond the thinking mind, the agitation focused on the symptoms, the problems we have, and what the partner's doing. And we settle the mind down, we transcend, we go beyond all sensory experience or mental activation, and we experience our source, which is the self, this consciousness, this spirit we spoke about. That's like watering the roots. And then we come back out into activity and we have more clarity of awareness. We have a more broader understanding of, our life and what might be imbalances and what we need. And we're more in tune with those desires. Oh, yes, I'm thirsty. I need more water. I'm hungry. And this is the sort of foods I'm desiring. And so developing our consciousness and what Maharshi would call evolving to higher states of consciousness, that we don't just live in what 99% of people today live in, which is either waking state of consciousness, dreaming state of consciousness, or sleep state of consciousness. He says if we can experience this source level, it's what they call samadhi in many of the Eastern cultures, what they now have seen as a fourth state of consciousness in modern science, then over time, it's like dipping a cloth into a blue dye, he calls it. We take a white cloth, we dip it into blue dye, we bring it back out, we expose it to the sun, most of the dye fades away, but a little bit of blue remains. We dip it in the dye again, and day after day, week after week of dipping it into the dye, exposing it to the sun, eventually that dye becomes steadfast. It's just a dark blue. He says it's the same with our life. We transcend, we experience our source, pure consciousness. We come back out into activity. A little bit of it fades, but a little bit remains. And day after day, we actually grow to higher states of consciousness. And what he calls cosmic consciousness is really the first level. This is what the ancients would talk about as being enlightenment or self-realization, nirvana. And he says this is where that unbounded, infinite, limitless expansion of our mind that we experience when we transcend is never lost when we come back out into activity. And so peak experiences that everyone's heard about, Abraham Maslow, people in sport or the art getting into these flow states and zone states where our performance is at a maximum. There's this beautiful mind-body coordination and effortless flow. We perform at our highest level, but without any stress whatsoever. It's seamless. It's beautiful. And Maharshi says these experiences, these peak experiences that we might have once or twice in our whole lifetime, are actually our natural state of functioning. This is how we're designed to operate 24/7. Now, I'm certainly not at that level, but that's really the Vedic science answer to, as you say, this using consciousness, or developing consciousness, so that we naturally make better decisions. It doesn't become a thing of willpower or discipline. It's just our nature.
Yeah, and with willpower and discipline, like I tell patients, like that soon fades,
Yeah.
and whereas if you're living in your higher being and your higher consciousness of what you're put on this, this earth to live, then you're not struggling with willpower. It's the imbalances that we create through foods. Like I just did a video the other day that kind of went viral, and it was about why would we keep putting foods into our body that we know are not good for us? We know that we can't focus and concentrate the best we can. They spiral us out, but we keep doing it, almost kind of abusive, rather than knowing what our body needs. We give our body and our gut what we need, and then we get to live at that higher conscious level. Whereas if you're not living in a state of being grounded, and you're living more in your head and then in your body. I feel like that's where so many get out of consciousness.
Mm,
And I'm admitting I'm not perfect either. And that's
yeah.
a, struggle, especially like all the multitasking that we're supposed to do now. Like, and I just think I know that's so hard on our cognitive function and the brain to really be in a higher conscious. So would you feel comfortable, or is there some sort of tip or trick with the transcendental meditation that you could really maybe share with somebody that like they could take a home today, like, and be like, oh, I could do that to help me? Or is it just the
Yeah.
meditation piece?
Well, yeah, TM itself, Transcendental Meditation, is something that is taught over a 4-day period. It's about an hour, hour and a half a day. So it's something that you have to go to a center and get taught properly by. But what I would suggest as a interim, or not an alternative as such, but as you were talking, what came to me is nature connection. And I'm sure you've been talking about to your listeners and patients for a long time, but I think it's worth reinforcing. Meditation, yes, transcending, primary. But I think a lot of our imbalances stem from our distancing from natural environments. Because as you're talking, I'm thinking it's just stress. We all know it's stress. Now, I get stressed. 14 years ago, I had a wife pass from breast cancer. It was the most stressful period of my life. And if someone came up to me and said, oh, don't go and have a pizza, or, go to bed on time, I told them to go and get stuffed, because it was just a period of life where life was just so challenging. We know, someone has a relationship breakup, and there's pizza boxes and beer cans. And so stress is really the key factor we have to try and craft our life around, where we can minimize stress. And we know now from the research that just having more connection to nature really neutralizes the stress, because we're all busy. People have children, they have demanding jobs, so we can't just separate ourselves from life and go and be a monk in the cave. But I think what people can really practically do, in addition to maybe learning a transcending based meditation, is just how do we get more nature connection? More plants in our workplaces, more, even like green walls. We know the science, just having more greenery calms the mind, elevates our mood, balances and neutralizes stress. Grounding, which I'm sure you've spoken about. I've done a lot for about 15 years now on earthing, just getting outside, getting the shoes and socks off occasionally, exposing the second most concentrated source of nerve fibers in the human body, the soles of our feet, to the ground. We get those negative ions coming into the body, dousing the inflammatory fires. It balances our mood and our circadian rhythms, just natural light. I go out every morning, and just, even if it's not direct sunlight, just natural light. Studies on 400,000 people through the UK Biobank. The people that get the most exposure to natural light during the day significantly reduced antidepressant medication, depressive symptoms, more positive mood, and much better quality and quantity of sleep, which we all know, if we sleep better, much better choices around food and exercise, etc., during the day. So, yeah, that'd be the two I'd suggest. Definitely highly recommend looking at something like TM, but it is a formal course. But otherwise, yeah, things like nature connection, and this idea of Dharma, that yes, we have to work, we have to earn an income, but are we doing the work or the vocation that we are naturally designed to do? And this is, again, the core of Ayurveda. We had that analogy of the tree. We want to water the roots to enjoy the fruits, Maharishi says. Well, the trunk of the tree is like our Dharma. Dharma is our natural purpose or duty. And so if we're naturally designed to be an educator, and we're out in IT or finance trying to earn zillions of dollars, that's going to be stressful because we're just not naturally designed for that. If we're a carer, you know, a nurse or a doctor or a aged care worker, and we're doing something else, we're never, ever going to be in balance. So we can, as you say, we can have a Dr. Holly or someone else telling us all this beautiful wisdom about what to eat and what our body type is. But there's always going to be that stress and that sort of lack of coordination between mind and body. So knowing that Dharma, just what our natural tendencies, what we love to do, what we do effortlessly and easily, and then trying to find a way we can marry that in with a way to produce money or our vocation from it. Really important.
Yeah, I love this conversation, Mark, because I think so many people today are going after the dollar
Mm,
and climbing the dollar ladder.
yeah,
Whereas I say to my patients, a long time ago when I was younger, I had this saying said to me in the Caribbean, which I just came home from: if you love what you do and you do what you love, the money will come to you, right? And we
yeah,
have to understand that, our banking systems were created, but really, if we look at life about what Mark is talking about, those of you that are listening to the replay and hearing this, I really want you to hear Dharma strong. Because if you're not doing what you were put on this earth to do, and you're doing something else, you're not living out who you are. And then life becomes a struggle bus, really. And you're
mm,
not showing up with like all your gifts. And if you're showing up with your health and your energy and your cognition and what you love to do, and you're not stuck in this circle of like just doing it to get the money, it
mm.
easily flows. Like for me to have this conversation with Mark tonight when I'm done work because he's in a whole nother continent doesn't feel like work to me.
Yeah,
It's like a natural conversation that I'm grateful that he showed up for all of us and grateful that he would take the time to speak to all of you. But I'm sure to him, this is natural as well. And the more that we're stepping into nature, again, that doesn't cost money to do the tips that he just suggested. Get outside, put your feet in the ground. We're in spring, we're in rebirth. Yes, it's a little cold here in the Northeast, but still,
yeah,
I just ran outside with my dog for a few minutes. Get the grounding and get outside. So no, I love that because I just know, especially everything that we went through recently disrupted so many. But so
yes,
many just stepped right back into what they were doing and they're still not happy.
yeah,
And
yes,
happiness gets to come here.
yes.
Now, Mark, how would you like to close for us? And I'll pop and see if there's any questions. But like, what is like what's a good summary of everything that we just talked about? Because it's just, so grateful to just really be in nature and be who we are.
Yeah. Two things come to mind. One was a story as you're speaking, and I wrote about this in the book. And it was a client of mine when I used to see clients way back, and her name was Katie, and she was in her early 20s, and she was coming to me with all these health problems. She'd put on weight, her digestion was out of sync. She wasn't sleeping well. She was stressed. And like you were saying, she wanted to tell me all the symptoms. And she was in IT. She was sort of in this busy corporate job. And about halfway through the consultation, it came up about that she'd moved into corporate from a teacher. And I said, oh, when did you do that? She said, oh, about 18 months ago. I said, oh, why'd you do that? And she says, oh, well, I really love teaching. I love the kids, but it wasn't paying very much. And all my friends had these really nice, great corporate jobs, and they were buying new cars. And I felt it was really, you know where the story's going. So she quit her job that she loved. She was a natural teacher. She loved the kids. That was her Dharma. But she went to something else that just wasn't her. And 18 months later, she's presenting to me with all these health problems. So, and the advice, of course, to her was, and I'd never saw her again, but really my advice was, here's, your diet and but I don't think that's the issue. You know, you've got to get back to doing your dharma. So, and I think we all resonate with that. That even there's little degrees that we might be close to our dharma, but we're just sacrificing one part of it. And even if we don't make as much money, yes, the money will generally flow, but sometimes it's better just to have a simpler, quieter life doing what we're born to do, and maybe sacrificing some of the more superficial trappings of life. And so the second point was just what was inscribed into the pyramids of ancient Egypt. The lady doctors, called the Schwant, would get inscribed at the top of the pyramids: true health comes from a happy heart. And in Ayurveda, we think of the heart as a lotus. You know, when the lotus opens, all the channels, what we call the schrotas of the body that carry the intelligence and the wastes out of the body and the nutrition to the cells, they're open and everything can flow. If that heart closes down, then all the channels become blocked. So we can eat the best food in the world, we can do the perfect exercise, we can do everything right, but that nutrition and that essence of health can't get to where it needs to. So yeah, the emotions first, as you were saying, do what makes you happy, get out in nature, transcend where we possibly can, and then generally things will flow a lot better.
And you'll get to live your dharmic life and just be so much, so much healthier, right?
Absolutely.
On so many levels. And, so many of you, we're talking about Ayurvedic, then we have Chinese medicine, we have natural medicine. At
Yeah.
the end of the day, all of these medicinal pieces that we're talking about, we as practitioners or health coaches or everybody calls themselves something different. At the end of the day, we get to the root cause of the challenge for each of you that are struggling. And like Mark is saying, it's not always a food, it's not always something that's thrown off. Like, look at your heart center. And I spoke at an event in Portsmouth on Sunday, and I loved what she said, because people say I can't meditate because we can't shut our mind off.
Mm.
And I loved what she said, because she said our mind isn't meant to shut off. We'd be dead, right? So don't think because your mind is racing that you're not quieting your mind and breathing. Like, even if, like, go back to what Mark said, like, just go inside and connect. And that's like, so important. So I just am so grateful for you, Mark, and just like everything that you're doing, like standing up and like the Ayurvedic piece. And I put your book in, I don't know, can they get it anywhere? I put in Ancient Wisdom for Modern Health. Is it found anywhere, like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, those sorts of things?
Yeah, it's definitely on Amazon and a number of sort of international outlets. But we also offered, I think, the audio book. We're happy to give that as a free gift as well to anyone who wants. So I think we had a coupon code. But anyway, they can jump on my website and then or email me and just say you've been on Dr. Holly's interview, and we can send them out the links where they can get a free audio book. But yeah, the hard copy books, Amazon, probably the best place to go.
So what is your website, Mark?
So it's dharmicliving.com. Dharmic spelled DHARMIC. So dharmicliving.com.
Is that right? It should come across here, dharmicliving.com. So yeah, feel free to reach out to Mark or reach out to one of my team members if you can't get to Mark, or just send us a message, and we are happy to get that to you. And I appreciate Mark for offering the audio on it. And if you have any questions at all, or if you listen to this in a replay and you put some questions in the comment, or you all know how to get to my team, info@simplehealthnh.com. And if we don't know the answers, we know that we can reach out to Mark and get the answers. So thank you
Yeah.
all for stepped in and joining us, and listening to Mark's heart. And yeah, just take good care of each and every one of you, and keep like living your dharmic life. Is there anything you want to close with before we end, Mark?
Oh, well, firstly, just thank you for having me. As you mentioned, it's certainly not work for me, and I know it's not for you, and just beautiful to have someone on the same wavelength and giving out the same wisdom that we can collaborate with. And yeah, to all your listeners listening, wonderful health. I've also just started a new newsletter on the Dharmic Living website called the Dharmic Living Feel Good Friday. So if they go on the site, they can certainly jump and subscribe to the newsletter and get little quick tips every week. So and keep in touch. So, but yeah, thank you for all the work you do, and to everyone, wishing them great health.
Thank you so much, Mark. And thank you to all of our listeners for another Health Mastery for Leaders Live. And connect with us and continue to join with us Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, typically at noontime, but we make special occasions because we didn't want to make Mark stay up till all hours of the night. And sending you all so much love, and we will see you all soon.